Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you had a nice little jam to our waiting room music, which you may have noticed was true to our theme of women empowerment. We're so excited that you've joined us today to launch our inaugural call for innovation focused on women in climate tech. Next slide, please. And one more. Amazing. So before we begin, we're grateful to acknowledge that the land on which this call originated is the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, and we commit to being active in our efforts for reconciliation as we launch and complete this call for innovation. Next slide. My name is Ashley Callister. I'm the Low Carbon Fuels Lead here at CICE. I'm co-leading this call for innovation with my colleague Chantel Cardin. During the session today, we will also hear from CICE's President and CEO, Sarah Goodman, and one of the women founders within CICE's current portfolio, Bethany Ladd, co-founder and lead of operations at ARCA. Next slide. A few housekeeping items to start with. We are recording this webinar and it will be available on our website after the session. The chat function will not be active during this webinar, so please use the Q&A function to submit your questions. They will be answered at the end of the session during a moderated Q&A by our VP of Marketing and Communications, Lindsay Chan. In terms of the agenda, Sarah will provide a brief introduction to CIC's vision for this call. Then we will hear from Bethany to provide her experience as a women founder in this space as it pertains to the development of ARCA. Next, Chantel will provide a brief overview of CICE and our portfolio. And I will further describe the landscape of women-founded ventures in Canada and BC to provide some context of the development and urgency of this call for innovation. We will spend the majority of our time with you today reviewing the application process and parameters and answering any questions that you may have regarding the call. Next slide. So before I pass it over to Sarah, we're curious to learn where you're joining us from today. So we're going to launch a little poll. Please select one of the options. We'll be leaving it open for about 30 seconds, just looking to get a sense of the attendance and the participation across the webinar here. Perfect. So we'll just give everyone just a few more seconds to tell us where you're looking at this from. Fantastic. So as we look at the results here, the majority of you are joining from BC, which is great because this is a BC-focused initiative, but I see there is some participation for Canada as well as outside of Canada. So we know this is a topic that transcends the borders of BC, and we appreciate the wide interest and attendance from everybody today. So now I'm pleased to pass it over to CICE's President and CEO, Sarah Goodman. Take it away, Sarah.
Everyone, I'm really thrilled that so many of you could join us for this webinar. It's great to see so many talented women ready to innovate and lead. I know I speak for all of us here at CICE when I say we can't wait to support your journey as innovators and entrepreneurs. It's a privilege to be here. So thank you very much for taking the time to learn about our call for innovation. I want to take a little bit of time to talk about basically why are we doing this call? And really the reason is quite simple. At CICE, we believe climate is both the existential threat of our time, but also a tremendous opportunity, economic opportunity. And so tackling this challenge is a monumental task, and it will take all of us to get there. And as much as women are leading in many ways, and we've seen women break barriers, and can't help but think of Kamala Harris today, no political commentary there, but seeing women break barriers, we do see a huge gap in venture and women in climate tech. So globally, the total amount of VC funding that goes to women is about 2%. And in Canada, we know only about 1 in 10 clean tech founders are women. And that's a huge disconnect in terms of this existential challenge and economic opportunity that we have. And we can't solve this challenge and unlock the potential of the clean economy when only half our population is fully engaged and half the population is underrepresented. So this isn't just about fairness, this is about unlocking potential. And at CICE, we're committed to doing our part to changing this. And we know many of you have been working on this challenge in many different ways across the country. And we are here today sort of joining you in this challenge. So right now, within our own portfolio, about 30%, just under 30% of our portfolio companies have women in leadership. And really, it's our goal as an impact first entity that's here to solve the climate challenge, but also to do that in a way that represents society, is to get those numbers up to 50%. And so we thought by doing an innovation call specifically tailored to women, we would be able to attract more solutions and make sure that we're getting those that representation and those solutions that we can build and deliver to the world. So we're really here to amplify, support, and champion your efforts, because we know when women lead, we all win for our planet, for our communities, and for our economy. So thank you for being part of this journey, and we're really excited to see what comes next. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sarah. Now I'm pleased to introduce Bethany Ladd. Bethany is a researcher, entrepreneur, and co-founder of ARCA Climate Technologies. As head of operations at ARCA, Bethany draws upon her scientific background and expertise in applied research management to lead the development, deployment, lab, and company operations. Her passion for making a difference in the world led her to co-found ARCA, a UBC spinout that has garnered international recognition, including an X Prize Milestone Award for carbon dioxide removal. Over to you, Bethany.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for having me today. Really happy to be here to speak about our experience with CICE. And yeah, so as mentioned, I'm co-founder of ARCA. ARCA is a carbon dioxide removal company. We capture CO2 directly from the atmosphere and turn it into rock, where it is safely stored forever. We're really focused on addressing the legacy emissions issue, the emissions that have been put into the atmosphere for the last 200 years since the Industrial Revolution, which needs to happen in tandem with reductions. So as you might surmise, our mission is very aligned with the mission of CICE, and we've been very lucky to have been working with them for several years, really since the inception of both of our organizations. Before jumping into talking about what that has been like, I wanted to give a quick background myself. My background is in science. I got my undergrad degree in geology, my master's in hydrogeology before working as a research scientist at the University of British Columbia, where we spun out the company. And all of that is to say is I've been a woman in STEM for my entire career. And there's definitely underrepresentation of women in those fields. But what I will say is that I didn't really feel it as much until I became an entrepreneur and until I entered the startup world and was fully in climate tech, which was when I first started to really feel the stark difference of where are all the women? Why am I the only woman in this room? And I started really thinking about it more in the last few years since I've been in this climate tech startup world. And so that's why I'm really excited to speak here today and advocate for this funding call, why this funding call is so important, especially with CIC's mandate to take kind of mid-level TRL companies to commercialization, that section especially. There's, as Sarah said, there's a lot of the population missing in that section, and the leadership from women there. So like I said, we've been very lucky to work with CICE on for a few years, and they've actually funded 3 different projects with us. So I'm happy to take questions later on about specific parts of our experience, but what I talk about is that CICE is very unique in that they offer non-dilutive funding as a pretty agile organization. Usually you're getting non-dilutive funding from these large government agencies, and those timelines can be very long. There can be a lot of red tape, and that could just, and we're very grateful for the partnerships that we do have with these government organizations. But it can be hard for a startup to work on those timelines. And that's been the really refreshing and nice thing about working with CICE, is that their timelines are quicker, their processes are simpler, and they're quite transparent and there to help. So the application process, it's on the website. What you see is what you get. It's quite straightforward. It's stage gated. You'll know if you make it to the next phase, and as you make it onto the final phase, then you start to get a lot more back and forth with the CICE team. The timelines are very straightforward. If they do change, that's well communicated. If your project is selected, then you not only have a great funder, but you have a supporter and a friend in many ways. It goes much further beyond the money. They're there to support you by making introductions, networking, helping you find new partnerships, more funding. And so, yeah, the value is, again, much greater than the dollar number. I don't want to speak for too long because I know just there's a lot to get through in this webinar. I'll just lastly say that the reporting process is also quite, again, they know you're an organization that is dedicating a lot of resources to building your company, building your product. So the reporting process is pretty low on the cumbersome scale, which is nice. And yeah, so I'm just so excited for this call and to see the projects and the women leaders that come out of it. And I'll stop there, but happy to take any questions later on.
Thanks, Bethany, for that. And maybe we'll have you maybe stick around for the Q&A at the end in the case there's any particular questions to you in your process. And thank you for telling your story and your journey at ARCA. I know that I've learned a lot in working with you and the team at ARCA for the last 3 years. So thank you for that. And I will now take on the presentation and explain who CICE is, who we are, and have Ashley follow up with the parameters of the call itself. So who is CICE? So next slide, please. The BC Centre for Innovation and Clean Energy is an independent, not-for-profit corporation that leads early-stage investment to fast-track the commercialization of clean technology. CICE was established by the Government of British Columbia, Shell Canada, and Natural Resource Canada in October 2021. And through our investments, we bridge and leverage public and private sectors, providing BC innovators faster, easier access to non-dilutive investment and industry partnerships that they need to be global leaders in climate action. Our goal is to scale BC's most impactful clean energy solutions from Canada to the world. CICE acts as a key piece to build IP, promote diversity, create jobs, and drive a clean and prosperous economy for decades to come through our iterative due diligence processes. What makes our investment process unique and how we do what we do is that CICE undertakes a unique, intelligent, risk-taking investment framework, which maximizes outcomes and advances credible, world-class clean tech solutions across the TRL 4 to 9 range, which leads us to our portfolio to date. Next slide, please. To date, CICE has invested $32 million in 48 clean energy and climate technology projects, valued at over $170 million across our 4 focus areas of battery and energy storage, carbon management, low carbon fuels, and low carbon hydrogen. We are BC's largest early stage climate investor, and as of today, 18% of the projects in CICE's portfolio has Indigenous participation, and a total of 528 jobs have been created from the projects represented within the portfolio. Next slide. This slide highlights the credible companies within our team here at CICE that we have proudly funded over the past 3 years. The portfolio showcases 48 of the innovative projects across each of the 4 focus areas, collectively working towards a potential greenhouse gas abatement of just over 1 megaton per year. As part of the Women in Climate Tech Call for Innovation, we are excited to welcome new companies into our impactful community and expand our portfolio. CICE is proud to play a pivotal role in building intellectual property, promoting diversity and creating jobs, and creating that clean, prosperous economy for British Columbia's clean tech community through our iterative due diligence processes. And as part of this processes, I'll actually have Ashley walk us through CIC's process in identifying the challenges faced by women founders in climate tech, and she'll also introduce the launch of the 2024 Women in Climate Tech Call for Innovation. Next slide.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chantel. So building a little bit on the background provided by our CEO, Sarah, I'll now dive deeper into how CIC formulates a call for innovation and really why we're here today. So as part of our process, we always start by identifying the main barriers or gaps. And for this topic, I think most people on the call are well aware of the underrepresentation of women in climate tech. And again, Bethany, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. To further highlight this imbalance, we've compiled some research to quantify. So the 2021 Mars Discovery District report, Women in Climate Tech Closing the Gender Gap in Clean Tech Innovation, highlights key challenges faced by women founders in the clean tech sector. So in that report, it highlights that women remain notably underrepresented, comprising only 10% of clean tech founders in Canada, with just 19% of clean tech companies having at least one woman founder. So on the slide here, when we look specifically at BC, we can see that only 7% of Canadian women clean tech founders are actually from BC. And within BC itself, only 5% of all clean tech company founders are women. This number increases slightly to 11% when we consider women co-founders in BC, but still relatively low across the board. We know that some of the main barriers to women founders include a limited access to funding, where 83% of women-owned SMEs rely on personal funding. This is compounded with gender bias and stereotypes, both of which further limit women founders' access to investment and stakeholder trust, impeding the growth of their startups. Challenges in building strong professional networks and connections within the clean tech industry can also hinder the ability to scale women-led ventures. And the overall underrepresentation in the venture ecosystem creates a cycle imbalance, where fewer women-led companies result in fewer successful exits, leading to fewer women-led investment decisions, and this perpetuates a lack of diversity in decision-making roles, ultimately reducing opportunities for women founders. Year over year since 2022, VC dollars for women founders has decreased by 22%. This further highlights the need for intentional investment in this space. Next slide. So once we identify the main barriers, we can look for the core opportunities. So for this, we examined our own portfolio to understand the current landscape at CICE. If we consider startups within our portfolio, we've allocated $9.5 million to date to companies with women in positions of power. For every CIC dollar, our women-led companies have received almost $8, so 7.9, in follow-on and co-funding. Out of our startup investments to date, 23% have been founded or co-founded by women. And if we consider companies with women in other positions of power, such as C-suite, so CEO, CFO, this number increases to 29%. So for us, it's a start, as Sarah mentioned earlier, but ultimately we feel that CIC can do better and really that we can lead by example. Next slide. Therefore, we're taking action by launching a call for innovation directly targeted women in climate tech. So this is the reason why we're here today. Next slide. To produce material interventions, we're providing up to $3 million in non-dilutive investment through this call for innovation. Our goal is ultimately to address the previously mentioned barriers by increasing equitable participation in climate, building out women-led ecosystems, and addressing gaps in funding and associated mechanisms. As Bethany alluded to in her experience working with us, we move really quickly and we really do try to reduce as many barriers as possible. We're hoping to learn and grow fast through this call. We know there's already innovators out there developing game-changing solutions, and we're looking forward to hearing about your questions today and your innovations moving forward. Next slide. I'll also say that in developing this call, we are extremely grateful to have the support of a fantastic advisory group who have copious experience in furthering women-led innovation and investment across Canada and beyond. We have the full group listed on our website, and we invite you to connect with them and check out the meaningful work they've already accomplished in this space. And really, we endeavor to continue strengthening this ecosystem, and we invite anyone on this call looking to explore material partnership opportunities to connect with us moving forward. So without further ado, let's get into the process and parameters for this call for innovation. There are a number of frequently asked questions that we will address first before moving into a live Q&A period. Next slide. So our first question, who can apply? When we talk about eligibility, this program is focused on BC climate tech companies with founders and co-founders who identify as women. So a founder is defined as an individual who has formed or established the business and holds equity shares within the business. Because we're trying to also increase accessibility and not create barriers, we will also consider companies for those who identify as women in C-suite positions as well, so long as they also hold equity shares. Priority will be given to projects that both solution and company are based in BC. However, we will consider applications from entities based outside of BC with a project in BC, or BC-based entities with a project outside of the province. As part of our commitment to reconciliation, we will also prioritize solutions that show meaningful Indigenous leadership. Next slide. In addition to women leadership, CICE is also looking for solutions with significant co-benefits. While we are broadly looking for climate hard tech solutions or soft tech solutions with direct GHG benefits, we will prioritize solutions that showcase potential as use cases within our current focus areas. So as a reminder, those are battery and energy storage, carbon management, low carbon hydrogen, and low carbon fuels. I'll now pass it over to Chantel to cover additional frequently asked questions.
Great. So what are the following important dates for the call itself? Stage 1 applications are opened as of today, November 4th, and all Stage 1 applications will be due on December 3rd. Stage 1 proposals include an expression of interest that requires a short video to explain basic details about the proposed project and a short form project description. This application is meant to provide an accessible platform to deliver an oral summary of the project that you'll be submitting, and you'll also submit this via web-based application on CIC's website. And all Stage 1 application decisions will be communicated on December 18th. And those who have been awarded to move to Stage 2 will be able to start their Stage 2 applications immediately. And this stage includes preparation and submission of a detailed proposal by participants, detailed due diligence, third-party assessments conducted by experts, and multiple engagements with the CIC project review team. Stage 2 detailed proposals have a deadline of January 29th, 2025, and applicants will be notified of the investment decisions on March 21st, 2025. And all project funding agreements will be executed and finalized by the end of March 2025. So next slide. So what type of projects are eligible as part of this call? So CIC's 2024 Call for Innovation, focusing on women in climate tech, aims to drive commercial development of hard tech solutions, as Ashley had alluded towards, that target direct emission abatement, reduction, or removal, as well as such as soft tech solutions that enable GHG reductions. And as mentioned, CIC will prioritize initiatives in the climate sector founded by individuals who identify as women. And to comply with CIC's mandate, of course, the projects must fall within the TRL of 4 to 9. And CIC is prioritizing companies that are based in British Columbia. However, we're going to consider applications from companies outside of BC's with projects that are proposed within British Columbia themselves. Next slide. So what is the maximum amount of funding per project? While CIC has no maximum amount per its funding, CIC does intend to fund several projects from the $3 million that is earmarked for this call for innovation. And we will not fund over 50% of project costs, as companies are expected to put some of their capital at risk to execute their proposed projects with CICE. And to provide an idea of the sizes of checks that CIC does write as part of the call, we do have an average funding per project currently within our portfolio of $700,000. Next slide. So when can the funding be used? So the average project length currently within CIC's portfolio is between 15 to 18 months, with maximum project length of 24 months. The project funding will be paid against the completion of milestones on a reimbursement basis, currently as what Bethany had explained to with regards to what we funded with the 3 projects that ARCA has worked with CIC on. The funding on this call will be awarded at the end of March 2025, and projects must start within 6 months of executed funding agreement dates. And as part of CIC's funding, we cannot accept purchases or expenses made as part of the project if they incurred before signing of the project funding agreement in late March 2025. Next slide. So how can the funding be used? Funding can be used to fund project-related activities and must be dedicated to further developing the commercialization of the technology and innovation as measured by the TRL levels. CICE focuses on advancing projects from a lab-based environment to testing and validation in pilot or early-stage demonstration projects with a partner or initial customer. While feasibility and FEED studies may be considered as components of a larger project, CICE will not fund these studies as a standalone initiative. Next slide. What is outside of the funding scope? Essentially, any general or corporate related costs outside of the direct costs of the proposed project is outside of CICE's funding scope. This includes day-to-day business operations, unrelated purchase capital equipment and leasehold improvements, furniture and equipment for routine businesses, advertising and any forms of business promotion, as well as human resource markups. And as I mentioned, any projects that solely focus on the development of studies and R&D are outside of CIC's funding scope. Next slide. What are the rules on stacking limited and the leverage funds from other programs? CICE funding can be stacked with funds from other programs and leveraged to obtain additional fundings. And while CICE prioritizes projects with strong private funding, as part of the nature of this call, CICE is providing flexible support options, including up to 25% upfront project capital to accelerate solutions to their next stage of development. Next slide. What is the structure of collaborative projects? The CICE does encourage and accepts projects led by a consortium. However, a lead organization is needed as an applicant lead as part of this call. And now we'll have Ashley lead our last poll for today before we get into the Q&A.
Fantastic. Okay, so now that you've learned a little more about the context and the parameters of the call, we're curious. How likely are you to apply? So same drill as before, we'll give it about 30 seconds and we'll just launch the poll question to have a better understanding of who's on the call today. Amazing. So we'll just give it one more minute here. Okay, well, so far it seems like the majority of attendees are likely to apply, so that's amazing. That's exactly what we love to see. There are some that are still deciding, so we hope that we can provide a little further clarity for you. And we're going to move now into a general question and answer period. So again, please use the Q&A function to enter your questions, and we're going to do our best to answer as many as possible on the call here. So I'll pass it over to Lindsay to moderate the Q&A.
Thank you, Ashley. So everyone, I have posted the FAQ that we have on our website here for the chat, so you can access that anytime. And I believe a number of these questions have been answered already, but maybe I'll throw this out to you ladies. Are any projects under circular economy eligible?
Absolutely. So again, we're looking to keep the parameters as broad as possible with a focus on hard tech in climate. So in terms of circular economy, that would likely be a fit. Just keep in mind that we do have those pre-mentioned 4 focus areas. So ideally there's some alignment with one of the 4, but again, a circular economy approach would likely be in scope for this call.
And I'll just add some tidbit on top of that. We will require that you do provide an understanding of what the GHG impact of the project looks like. So within circular economy, of course, we will accept the application. We will just need to have an understanding of what is the GHG impact to the project itself as well.
Okay. And I guess one of the questions for you ladies is, are we going to share this deck with others as well when we make this one public? Yeah. Okay, great. And we talked about the size of funding, but can you provide any clarity if someone wants to know if the number of companies is clear?
Sure.
Really good question. Yeah, as part of the call, we are intending to fund several projects under the $3 million. So that really depends on the amount of applications we receive and the final investment committee decisions as part of the call, but we do intend to fund several projects within it. Just keep in mind that CIC, as part of your application, will not fund more than 50% of project costs, if that kind of helps have an understanding of where CIC would implement its funding within the project.
And perhaps we can just expand on this. There's a question coming in about Alberta-based women founders eligibility. Do they need partners in BC?
Yeah, great question. So ideally, there's a BC partner, but if not, so long as the project is taking place in BC and the company can demonstrate a strong impact for the province of BC, whether that be job creation, GHG reduction, some sort of strong, tangible impact and presence here, then we'll still consider that project moving forward.
Great. Can we just maybe repeat what question 7 was? Someone's asking, they missed that one. Perhaps it's one of the ones that other people are looking to have answered. Okay. There you go. Can we expand on how the funding can be used?
Absolutely, I can expand on this. So the funding can be allocated towards any project-based activities as part of the project that the proponent is applying with. So CIC has no parameters and restrictions as with regards to the project itself. We will have to do in terms of understanding where the expenses are coming from. We will have to see receipts in terms of payments, etc., upon the milestone report if the company were to be within the funding realm of CIC. But just keep in mind that we do milestone funding basis in terms of supporting the projects that come within the portfolio. So just keep in mind that we do fund all project activities. We just will require in terms of understanding where those activities are coming from once they go through the milestone stage with CIC.
Thanks, Chantal. Here's a question about projects related to repurposing and reusing materials included in this call. Would they be included? I don't
Yeah,
know,
so
Ashley, you want to take
again,
that?
kind of leading back to the initial parameters, as long as there is a tangible GHG impact, if it's able to be tied back to our focus areas, that's fantastic. But in terms of material use, and again, we're going to evaluate everything on an individual basis, so likely we'll need more information before saying a yes or no on this call. But if you're able to tie it into climate hard tech, we're trying to keep it as open as possible. So we would love to hear from you and the innovation that you're developing.
There's a couple of questions in regards to the expenses and reimbursement structure, and I guess like maybe a bit more detail or clarity can be provided on that process. Ashley and Chantal?
Sure, yeah. So we're reimbursement based, as Chantal mentioned. So all expenses would need to be kind of accrued up front to complete the activities listed within a milestone. And then once that report was submitted to CICE and we verified that all the expenses and the activities were indeed allocated to the project and completed, then we would reimburse those with a non-dilutive payment to the company. And in terms of the expenses, again, they have to be project related. So it would need to be, for instance, if you're expensing a rent or some sort of capital purchase, only the portion of that that is directly in line with the project. And from there, we would reimburse.
What about upfront funding?
Great question. So as part of this call, specifically, we are exploring the option for upfront funding because we understand that there are quite a few barriers in the space, as alluded to, that we don't want to perpetuate moving into this call. So on a case-by-case basis, we will evaluate projects, and if the need is there for direct upfront funding, that is something that we are willing to explore.
Thank you. Is there a GHG impact range that is expected for projects?
No, there is not. Just in terms of understanding of what the assumptions are behind the modeling that your project is inherently reporting with regards to the GHG impact, we will inquire about, especially with regards to the stage 2 process here at CIC.
Thanks, Chantal. And Chantal, I'll throw this one to you. Can you elaborate on soft tech criteria? Does it need to be a direct solution for carbon removal?
Yes, great question. It would have to be directly enabling hard tech solutions. So measuring, reporting, and verification technologies could be part of this call itself. So if there are companies that are looking at measuring and reporting and maybe verifying some of the reductions or removals that hard tech technology is claiming to implement, then that is something that we would consider within the call itself. But once again, if you have a software tech solution and you think it fits within the focus areas or the mandate within CIC, we encourage you to apply because we want an understanding of what the impact looks like. So if you do have a software idea, we encourage you to apply as part of this call.
Thank you. And I see a number of questions here that I know are answered in the Q&A, but I'll try to go through some as well. Does IP related costs qualify as well?
Yes. So again, as it would be directly related to the project, if you're developing IP associated with the technology, then 100% that would be an eligible cost.
Okay. And if you're looking for clarity on our focus areas, they are on our website. So you can take a look there, but I believe this call is a bit more general. So I don't know, ladies, if you want to kind of, talk a bit through how this is different than our other previous more focused calls.
Sure. Yeah, I think we can kind of both add into this one. But in the past, we've either done an open call for innovation, so across our 4 focus areas, or a really specific directed call for innovation within one of the areas. So this call is completely unique and new for us in that it is encompassing all of our focus areas and kind of beyond. So ideally, the impact is both a climate and a social impact through this. So hard tech is a pretty loose definition, and we're hoping to keep it that way. So I'll pass it over to Chantal to clarify a little more too.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at climate technologies as part of this call. So we really just want an understanding of the solution that you and your company are developing and the impact that it has in terms of GHG emissions and the social impact that it can create at scale and even at the project scale. So we really just want to understand who is working on what and how can CIC implement and support on some of the scaling of these great climate technologies that we know are out there.
In terms of company stage or size, can a brand new company submit for this application?
Yeah, 100%. We don't have any kind of minimum incorporation requirements. The main requirements we're looking for are really that intentional and impactful women empowerment aspect. So even if the company is brand new, but they're developing a novel tech or kind of scaling a solution, as Chantal alluded to, please, by all means, come visit us.
Thank you. So I'm just going through, there's a lot of questions here I believe we've answered. A really great one from Joanne. Can CICE facilitate networking with other women founders to enhance the potential for a collaborative application?
Absolutely. There will be opportunities throughout the process of this call for innovators to connect and network. And we do have a number of upcoming partners as part of this call who will be supporting within that as well. So details to come, but as part of this call, there will be opportunities for founders to connect and create that community to support the implementation and the scaling of your technologies.
Thanks, Chantal. Sorry, they're rolling in still. Okay, so another question that just came in. What about for technologies where we still need to measure the GHG emission reductions? Can we apply for funding to help measure or conduct an LCA?
Potentially, yes, we would accept the application as part of that. We would just have to have a further detailed analysis and conversation with the founder, of course, with regards to the exact technologies that you're looking to be impacting with regards to the LCA that you are conducting.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
just to build off of that, the kind of model that CIC pursues is that we are more of a project funder as opposed to a company funder. So the LCA work would need to be in line with a project that you're developing, not kind of a general LCA for a company development. So as long as that's the case, then we would consider that in terms of eligible.
Oh, Nada, sorry, I said, might not pronounce your name correctly. Are any considerations being given to projects in ag tech?
Yes, absolutely.
This call is quite broad, so we're not limited to our focus areas. So I think that's the big takeaway here. Okay, so can we apply for funding to cover MVP, manufacturing, hiring a technician, transportation costs, etc.? Another question related to what kind of costs are eligible for the funding.
Yeah, so again, as long as they're eligible project costs, 100%. If you're just buying yourself a new Porsche for the fun of it, probably not. So anything that's directly project related, 100% eligible.
Yeah, and that would include equipment or facility setup. Yes. There's a question here about defining, and I think you've touched on this, soft tech versus hard tech in climate solutions. I know that's a question that often comes up. So perhaps you guys can kind of explain a bit the definition between the two and how we apply that funding.
I was just going to say, soft tech can be included. We just have to see with regards to the impact that you're creating to enabling hard tech solutions for scaling. So that is a caveat with regards to the soft tech applications that we will be reviewing. However, that being said, we do encourage software tech solutions to apply to this call so we can have a better understanding of what technologies and GHG impact that you're enabling with your technology and software solution.
Yeah, and just in terms of definition, I mean, we're considering hard tech solutions to be just that, something material, tangible, that is an actual technology where you have the material equipment that you're developing, whereas soft tech is, as Chantal said, more of a software or cloud-based innovation. And I'll just say as well that we do also consider business model innovation as part of this. So that wouldn't be kind of classified as one or the other, but if you're able to develop a specific business model innovation that's able to be replicated across jurisdictions and really enable the development of future tech, then that's something we would consider also.
Okay, so yes, facility setup and pilot plants would be covered as part of those eligible criteria. Is it carbon emission related projects only that are eligible?
No, we look at GHG impact as well as, to Ashley's point, we're also going to be looking at social impact as part of the project and the technology at scale as well.
Okay. And this was touched on, but I will ask it as well. Would a company be eligible if only one of several founders identifies as a woman?
Yes. So we would consider that to fall under co-founder, which is fantastic and definitely still eligible for the call.
Okay. Can funding go to organizations based solely on letters of interest and pilot projects, even if we have not generated revenue?
Yes, we do accept applications from pre-revenue companies as part of all of our calls here at CIC.
One of the last questions here is there a weighted score towards avoided emissions, i.e. operational efficiency improvement versus carbon capture and removal technology?
I wouldn't say a weighted score. So as Lindsay mentioned, we're going to have a lot of material on the website that can kind of help guide you as you're crafting your application. So one of those is our application guide. Within that, we have our 7 strategic kind of criteria that we always abide by here at CICE. And number 1, of course, is we always say our number 1 stakeholder is the planet. So understanding what the climate impact is. But within that, we have 6 other criteria that we consider almost equally in terms of weighting, because no project is the same and we consider each project on its individual merits. So I invite all the innovators on the call today to check our website out after this and make sure you're reading through that applicant guide.
Great. And really great question that just came in from Samantha. What is the matching funding expected from the supported ventures?
Really great question. It's somewhere within this presentation itself, but CICE will not fund over 50% of project costs. So we will require 50% of project costs to be funded either by the proponent itself or other funding mechanisms and leveraged funding that the proponent has as part of the project. So that's just a caveat in terms of our stacked funding and where CICE can come in.
Yeah, and I will just say that, again, because we're really doing our best to understand the barriers and kind of transcend barriers in the space, that if you don't have that funding available, but you still have a project that you're developing, please reach out to us so that we can understand if there's an opportunity for us to play a role in helping find maybe additional funders, et cetera, as you're looking to kind of further secure capital for your project. We're really trying to understand how we're not causing the problem, but we're alleviating problems as we move through this.
Yeah, so if there are funding gaps within your project, please feel free to apply. That will not be something that we're looking into in terms of CICE. We want to understand what are the technologies and what are the solutions that founders can provide to really help bring that climate impact to scale. So that's what we really want to understand as part of this call.
Thank you. And I think we've gone through them all. If anyone has any last questions, please submit them now. Otherwise, I think they've been answered. And again, we have the very detailed application guide and FAQ on the website. We will have these questions added to the FAQ. If some of them are not there, we will add them. And yeah, I'll turn it back to the ladies to close it out. But thank you very much for all your questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Lindsay. And if you have further questions throughout the call, please don't hesitate to contact us at our Women in Climate Tech call email as displayed on this slide. And next slide, please. So as mentioned, the 2024 Call for Women in Climate Tech Call for Innovation is officially launched. A recording of this webinar will be made available on our website for anyone wanting to re-review that was discussed or share with potential applicants who may be interested in applying to the call itself. And we have also uploaded, as to Lindsay stated, a frequently asked questions page to our website alongside the application guideline for the expression of interest. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the CIC team, and we look forward to your applications. And thank you all for joining today's webinar, and it was very insightful, and we're looking forward to the inspiring applications that we receive as part of this call.